after Cats. So I did that for a year. And then my goal was to get my equity card. And equity card means that you are now a part of the actors union. So you get health insurance, you get a better salary. And for me, that was the smaller goal, right? Along that bigger goal to Broadway. Because I had that goal, I had to turn down several jobs. There were several jobs that I booked, but they weren't offering me my equity card. So I had to say no. And that's something else I think that's really important to impress upon everyone listening, that sometimes when we have our vision so clear and we know what the next steps are, it takes some maneuvering. And sometimes that maneuvering is you putting your foot down on what isn't serving you for that bigger dream. And it was tempting, trust me, because as a performer, you can be high on living as a Tony Award winner and then the next day be out of work. So it is very unstable. So to say no to jobs, it's like, oh, are you crazy? But for me, it was never about money. This was always about wanting to be on Broadway and seeing myself in the heart of New York City doing what I loved. And I kept that vision really clear. So I turned down several jobs. And then the next thing that I auditioned for was the world premiere of Disney's High School Musical. If you all remember, Disney's High School Musical was like a huge craze. The movie came out, we're all in this together. And we were the first stage version. Well, I booked it. And I have to tell you, another memory that stays so clear in my mind is when they told me I booked it. I was in the studio where we auditioned. It's called Chelsea Studios on like West 26th Street in Manhattan. And I start screaming. I start running up and down the hallway. I know it was probably so obnoxious because everyone else in the other studios were probably like, oh, great, she booked Broadway. Meanwhile, it was the fact that I got my equity card and I was going to be making I forget what the salary was. But I called up my grandmother this time and I was like, Gram, because she lived with us growing up. Gram, I got my equity card. And my grandmother, who doesn't even know what that is, she's just so happy because I'm so happy. And she's like, oh, I'm so happy for you. And we're on the phone. I'm crying. And that was my next gig. So we did that in Atlanta and then got word that they were going to be doing a national tour of it. So then I went on tour for 9 months, living my dream. I was understudying Sharpay Evans. I went on for her all the time. I got to perform when we presented on the Disney lot. I got to be Sharpay. It was like the most incredible experience, but still I felt that little voice in the back of my head. I call it the quiet voice of our souls telling me like, Renée, you still didn't get your Broadway debut. So I left and everyone thought I was crazy because we were making such great money. I mean, it was Broadway salary. And when you tour, you also get per diem. So I was making the most money I ever did in my whole life, but I left. And all of my friends were like, what are you doing? And I'm like, I need to get to New York. And again, another lesson. Sometimes we have to turn down the shiny, bright object in front of us, the money and the riches and the glamorous side of life to get to where we want to go. And that's what I did. And then I went back to New York City again, auditioned nonstop for about a month. And then I booked the Universal Swing for 3 companies of Jersey Boys. Now, a Universal Swing is the same thing as a swing, but for different companies. So just to give you an idea, when I covered the national tour, the Vegas company and the Chicago company. So if they needed me in any of those places, they would fly me out. Renée, we need you in Vegas next week. And you're probably going to cover Francine. And I had to know not only that role, but the role from that cast, which even though it's the same show, they were all slightly different. So I would have my separate sets of index cards for each cast and each company. Wow. And it was not just physical. Being a swing like that, it's so mental because you have to be on top of it. And I'm sure you get this, Michael. It's like sometimes things are harder when they're so similar. Like if I was doing a different show and had to know those roles, it probably would have been easier because it wasn't so closely related. Like I would go to Chicago company and the final pose would be my right arm up. But then when I was on the tour, it would be my left arm up. And it sounds simple, but it trips you out. So again, such incredible training. And for me, this was so special because I'm really from New Jersey. I grew up listening to Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons. And it was like a dream show. So I was like, okay, even though I said this to myself and it was the truth, even though I'm not booked in the Broadway show, this is still such an incredible show that I want to be a part of. So I want to tour with it.